And the webinar has begun, and I see folks joining. Always a great sign. I don't know why we've done this for 9 months now, and yet every time we have a virtual event, I'm concerned that I've somehow messed up the technology and we are not streaming to an audience, but that does not seem to be the problem. So excited to have you all here with us for another episode of The Lunchroom. Hi, Mark. Happy Tuesday.
Hi, Sarah. Happy Tuesday to you as well.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I think we're both, this is completely inadvertent, and I'm just noticing that we're both wearing turtlenecks. So I am interpreting that to mean that we're just like very connected today.
I think that may be true. I am also not a turtleneck person. It kind of drives me crazy. So I don't know what motivated me today, but something told me.
Same.
To deal with it.
The shirt is not comfortable. Between the lamppost and the audience, this was a mistake, but we're rolling with it. It looks nice on camera. We're going to go for that. So pleased to have you all joining us today. I am Sara Schofield-Manser. I am the Assistant Director of Special Events and Partnerships at the ART. I use the she series of pronouns, and I am a white woman with shoulder-length, dark brown hair, wearing what I believe to be a sort of pseudo zebra print turtleneck, as we've now established. And I've got headphones in, and I'm sitting in a little office chair, strategically positioned to hide some sort of clutter in the back of my office. So you'll note that I'm at an awkward angle now, but it's all done with forethought. And I do want to take a moment quickly before we begin to acknowledge the Indigenous and unceded land that Oberon and the Lobe occupy. They are both on the territorial land of the Massachusetts people. I myself am calling in from land of the Massachusetts, Pennacook, Pentucket, and Wabanaki people. I'm going to pop a link in the chat for all of you if you'd like to investigate the Indigenous land that you're calling in from today. And I encourage you to do so and to learn more about the origins of the land that you are occupying right now. So I'm going to turn it over to Mark for his intro before I disappear.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Hi, everyone. Mark Lunsford back with you 3 weeks in a row after a little hiatus.
We love it.
I am calling in from Pawtucket land, what is now referred to as Somerville. I am sort of light complected white man, brown beard, brown hair. My hair's getting long, so it's actually getting very spiky. I get very spiky hair when it's long. I'm wearing the aforementioned turtleneck, which is gray. And I'm wearing glasses today too, which is not something I typically do when I work on my computer. It's more of a driving tool, but I don't know. Felt motivated to wear the glasses today too. Maybe I was feeling very like coffee house, coffee shop, like cigarette and a espresso today.
French. You're feeling French is what you're telling me. It works.
It occurred to me that was very French as I was describing it, but
same.
It's happy to have everyone back. We're, really kicking off the lunchroom this year with a lot of energy. It's been really exciting. We are really looking forward to the conversation with Brian today. And I, just before I forget, because I often forget at the end, or as many of you know, I often don't pay close enough attention to the time, and then we're out of time, and I still have so many things I'm supposed to tell you. But for those of you who were tuning in for Behind the Scenes with Kate Hamill and the conversation around her adaptation of the Odyssey, we had to postpone that last week, and we are very excited to get to that tonight. So if you had tickets, it is tonight. If you are still interested, head to the website and register for this evening's event.
I'll pop a link to that in the chat just so you all know where to go.
Great. This Friday night, we're debuting a new piece from the Boston Circus Guild that was part of the Virtually Overrun series called Keep the Light On. That will be debuting on January 15th, this coming Friday. Very exciting. And then, we've also, as mentioned last week, announced our lunchroom guests for the month. So next week, Lisa Yancey of Yancey Consulting will be joining, and that will be hosted by Anna Fitzloff, our dear friend, managing director of ART, who has yet to host a lunchroom. So that's very exciting. And then the week after that, we'll have our stage management roundtable, which I think is going to be a blast.
I cannot wait for these.
And then last but not least, January 25th, we'll be having a Civically Speaking event with the creators of We Live in Cairo. They're releasing a new album with songs from the musical, recorded by some of the cast and some incredible recording artists, sort of across the Arabic diaspora. And they'll be in conversation about the show, about this album, and it will be the 10th anniversary of the uprising in Tahrir Square. So please check that out and join us on January 25th for that conversation. Did I hit it all, Sarah?
You did. I think you did. The only things that I would add are that the Civically Speaking registration is not yet active. It will be active later today. So I will keep an eye on our website. The links that I'm dispersing right now will also give you sort of a link to our general shows and events page if you're interested in that, but you'll be able to register for that soon. The only other thing I would add, Mark, is that we've got about 40 minutes for question and 15 minutes for Q&A at the end. So if you have a question for Mark, for Brian, please feel free to submit it at any point using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. And please note that it is different from the chat feature. And if you have any questions, you can private message me and we can figure out how to troubleshoot the tech on your end. Without further ado, I think this is my time to do the rest and go off camera. So I will see you all next week for another episode of The Lunchroom. And again, if you have any trouble, please feel free to DM me in the chat. I'll be here waiting in the wings. Bye, Mark. I'll see you later.
Thanks, Sarah. Hey, Brian, can you come into the lunchroom and join me here?
What's going on, Mark?
How's it going?
Good. Great. Really happy to be here.
Yeah. Could you introduce yourself for the folks?
Absolutely. My name is Brian Quijada. I go by the he, him, his pronouns. I am on land of Lenape in New York City. I am a Latinx man wearing a, what do you call this? Like mustard? Yeah, brown? I don't know what it is. It's kind of like it matches my skin tone a little bit. And I'm wearing a brown Bulls hat representing where I originally come from, which is the Chicagoland area. I got a bunch of instruments behind me and a brick wall. I'm really happy to be talking with you, Mark, and here in the lunchroom.
I'm so happy for this conversation. But I have to start actually. This was a question that we had not talked about in advance. But are you a big Bulls fan? Like, are you a big basketball fan, a big Bulls fan?
Yeah. I mean, I grew up I grew up right at I was born in 88, right? So that's around the time that I was like coming right up when Michael Jordan was in his heyday. Yeah. So though, like, I don't think I was like incredibly conscious of how amazing he was. Our entire block was always watching the Bulls game, watching him play. I think, the Bulls have had their fair share of ups and downs since. I stay very, very, it's like the only sport. I used to play basketball probably because of Michael Jordan and the 90s Bulls. It's the only sport that I actually watch.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up near Cincinnati, so it's a little bit, it's not like a basketball desert because college basketball is big. Like, Dayton, big team, University of Cincinnati's big team. But the NBA, it's like not really around. So I too was like a pretty big Bulls fan. And have you watched the Michael Jordan?
The Last Dance? I have watched, I'm on my third time watching it. It's incredibly inspiring. I don't know what it is. Like, first off, I should say that I don't condone all of Michael Jordan's philosophies. But it is incredibly inspiring to me, how competitive he was. His drive is incredible. I'm very inspired by it. I think his passion to be the best, nothing getting in his way is pretty inspiring. And there's a lot of nostalgia that comes with it. So I watched it a lot.
Yeah. No, I mean, I was born in 85, so we're similar ages, and I just didn't remember him being such a jerk.
Yeah, no, for sure.
There are these moments that were just shocking to me.
I think it was very kept under wraps, especially when that book came out, that expose of just Michael Jordan being a huge jerk, I think. And, his gambling problem or whatever you want to call it. I think that kind of slipped my mind. I think it was just forgiven. Also in a time where I think that time there was no cancel culture so it was just like, no, social media wasn't a thing. It's just like, no, he's the best. He is the best of the best in all the world. Like Muhammad Ali is the only person that's comparable, right? Like it's yeah.
Also, like the way the documentary is made, I was like, I feel so much stress and anxiety about whether they're going to three-peat twice, even though I know they're going to do it. Right, but I'm watching it like, oh my God, but are they going to win? Are they going to win? Are they going to three-peat the second time? I don't know. I was like, of course you know this.
Of course you know. Of course you know. And I also, I love that. I feel like do you know that that intro music for the Bulls? I feel like that. I whenever I want to pump myself up, I play that in my Spotify.
Yeah, to the audience, we definitely listened to that in the 20 minutes before we came on today, just to get ourselves really hyped.
Oh my God, amazing.
So it's so good to have you here, Brian. I think one of the things a theme that's going to be in our conversation today is the fact that like you and I have never met because our working relationship has only existed on Zoom. But I want to talk a lot about, of course, you're coming into the Dragon family, composing music for Dragon Baby, the third and Sara Porkalob cycle, which is so exciting. But before we get into that, I also just wanted to sort of like dig into some of your work. And I think, something we've talked about on the lunchroom a lot, and some of the artists that I get really, really interested in are folks who are like multi-hyphenate, right? For lack of a better word, that just are writing, performing, composing, sort of doing all of the things. And so that's kind of where I wanted to jump in today, was just kind of digging into like, how were you first bit by the artistic bug, right? Like what was your portal into the arts?
Yeah, I was in sixth grade, I think sixth grade. And my brother was in high school and he was going to college, and he was the first one of our family to go to college, right? My two older brothers ended up graduating high school and then like trucking, just like my dad. And my brother was just like, oh, what do I do? And his like final year of high school, he started getting into theater. And his first year in college, he took me to go see Cabaret, a production of Cabaret in his at his Columbia College in Chicago.
Oh, wow.
And I was floored. And to this day, I think still I am the MC in Cabaret is like dream role. I don't know that I'll ever play the MC. I don't know that I can, but I would love to. If it takes me producing it on my own, and doing it in my garage. So from that point on, they say that like every theater artist starts as an actor, or a lot of them do. And so, yeah, I just got that little, like, I just wanted to be on stage. And so I did that. Like, I in middle school, unfortunately, I shouldn't say unfortunately, it was amazing that we had productions at all, right? But middle school, the productions for musicals. So I was like, oh man, I got to learn how to sing. And my dad was a singer. And so I joined chorus and started learning. What was great, I had an amazing middle school teacher who in chorus class was like, singing, but also like history of American music. So that's where like my love of the Beatles came from, and like Don McLean, Bill Withers, a huge, amazing kind of history of American music. And from that point on, I was singing. I still don't consider myself to be like an amazing singer, but I can sing. And yeah, so then I kept doing it through high school, and after my brother was an actor, my parents were like, cool, Brian, so you got to pick something else to do. and I'm like, oh God, but I really want to go to theater school. And they were like, no. And I'm like, okay, let's compromise. So I went to the University of Iowa because I wanted to become an a high school English teacher that also taught the high school program after school.
Yeah.
And a couple years into my college years, I couldn't couldn't stay away. I was like doing theater as a minor, but also auditioning for shows, right? And I was like, I can't stay away from this, and switched my major, and to my parents' dismay. And then moved to New York City shortly after doing some shows, and so that was like actor, right? Actor Brian, and then moving into the rest is kind of a lot of what my show. Where Did We Sit on the Bus? That's where Did We Sit on the Bus comes in. But acting and performing musicals, I think, was the initial bug.
It's kind of interesting too. I feel like a lot of people, when we're thinking about going into the arts or wanting to make the arts our profession, right? I know a lot of people, myself included at the beginning, who were like, well, I'm going to go into music education.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I can't imagine a career at 16 years old of being a professional musician necessarily.
Yeah.
But I could be a band teacher.
Absolutely. And also to prove to your parent, like, I mean, I think, like, you know, the thing is that, like, you know, you tell your parents, or at least I told my parents, who were like immigrants that came to the United States in the 70s, right? Where I was just like, now it occurs to me that they didn't know any artists. They didn't know they were. It's not a viable occupation in their country, right? So to say that you're like, I'm going to make my living doing this, they're like, I don't buy it. I've never met anybody who does it. Right. So, you know, but they're like, I have heard of teachers, you know what I mean? Like, I do have some teacher friends, so you could do that, and you could like not die, you know, of starvation doing that. Yes. So yeah, man, I think that was a for real thing up until though I do love teaching, and luckily now I get to teach in a weird kind of full circle way. It was like the stars aligning, me having to like commit to doing theater full time.
I wonder too, how, because I think this, in particular in the pandemic, I think this has become very true for a lot of artists. When you think about all of these sort of identities or all these roles, right, that you step into, whether it be as a writer or as a performer or as a teacher, are there ways that you like approach those jobs, or ways that you approach those responsibilities that are similar or different from one another, or sort of how does one feed the other, right? Like, I'm struck by what you were saying in terms of learning music history as a way of understanding performance better. And I wonder like how the sort of approach to these different kind of roles.
I would say that I like a lot of this. So I think there's a lot of like attending that. My dad used to be like, you know, the best university is life. And I'm like, what is this such a corny thing to say? But I'm like, but I kind of dig it. I get what he's saying. And I think that like, now, like after doing a bunch of different art forms, I should say, is the thing that kind of relates them all. Is musicality, more specifically, probably like timing. My brother and I used to watch a bunch of like, he's a clown in Chicago now, and also DJ, but clowning is was his first passion. And a lot of that is a timing. You know, you watch silent movies, you watch, cartoon, even those old Tom and Jerry cartoons, they have an incredible timing. Comedy is like all time. It's right. Steve Martin in his, it's all about timing. And then now as music has become a kind of a center focus for me, timing has a huge, factor in musicality. And, I also say that, you know, in music, I didn't even know, but I played with it. You know, you play with it as actors. You know, if you start speeding up or then you start slowing down in your rhythms, it tells different stories. Or even in pitch, if I'm like speaking in like a super low, resonant kind of tone, and then I start picking it up to the high register of my voice and I start speeding up, they tell completely different stories. And so I think music has always kind of been there in like a kind of deep exploration of all the things that I've tried. And I love music. There's some, like, our house was always playing music. that it's the one thing that I can connect to all these different branching out of the things that I do.
I mean, the timing conversation is really interesting too, because you use hip hop a lot in your writing. I mean,
I do.
Shows. And we've been lucky at Oberon because the local hip hop community in Boston has sort of like adopted Oberon as one of their usual suspects in terms of places they're going to perform. Right.
I love that.
And like working on shows with hip hop artists in particular, there is this sort of immediate shared language from theater artists and hip hop artists that I don't always experience with other performance artists. Right. And so I've been thinking a lot about like, how do like hip hop and theater actually do seem and are so well matched to one another in so many ways. And I wonder what that means for you. Like how hip hop was like a useful tool in theatrical performance. Yeah,
well, I think the thing that's immediately comes to mind about hip hop and why I was drawn to it is that, like, hip hop artists don't necessarily, there's no school of hip hop, right? Like it's like anybody is allowed in if you can tell a story right. Like if you can tell a story that's compelling, you're in. You can tell a story through hip hop, and I think that's an incredibly liberating thing, right? That I don't need to go to fancy school necessarily. There is no fancy school to go to for hip hop. You know what I mean? Right. It's like you come up with like the people that you listen to, the people that you watch on MTV, right? Or at least that you used to watch on MTV, I should say. And I think that's incredible. But the hip hop was born out of this. First off, hip hop was born out of like a party, right? Like I love that out of like, feeling like, the constructs of feeling, like a minority in society or marginalized, comes this like, we need to decompress. How do we decompress it? Let's throw a party. Hip hop was born because the DJ couldn't both be on the mic being like, yo, what's going on? And DJ at the same time. So we hired a master of ceremonies to speak on his behalf, who then became the MC. And then the MC was just like, yo, this DJ's amazing. How about me though? And then like, he's just like, now let the DJ break it down. And then the DJ would get to this, little section of the hip hop track, like let it be James Brown or whatever, but just like the breakdown of the beats. And then the dancers would come out, hence Breakdancers. You know what I mean? Like it was born out of a party. And I think that's really kind of this performative, I don't want to say escapism, but this kind of storytelling through the times and kind of a release. Theater and hip hop are the same. I remember I was doing one of the first plays I professionally did was a play called How We Got On by Idris Goodwin, and we did it. The world premiere was at Actors Theater of Louisville, in the Bingham Theater, which is theater in the round. And I was really nervous. I'd never done anything in the round before, and Idris was just like, "It's like a cipher. It's like old school Greek, like any event. If somebody is breakdancing, people surround them. Like it's not like seats in front of you and then the breakdancer right in front. It's like you're just surrounded. So like imagine it like a cipher, or imagine it like a breakdance battle. And that was a really kind of beautiful. I eased into it. I'm like, you're right. And, and I love that. I think they're very intertwined.
I mean, Idris has this play Hype Man that Company One did here in Boston. It was so incredible. And I'm so glad you brought his name into the conversation, right? Because it's like that he's another person who's just like not only bringing hip hop into the show, but like telling the story through the sort of politics and evolution of hip hop.
Absolutely. He's great. He's a long time. We went to school together. We met in school. We met in Iowa, actually. We met in Iowa. But he's lovely. He's amazing. Hype Man is one of my favorite plays.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's great. So when you're, I think that some people discount hip hop sometimes, especially in a musical sense, right? It often sort of is like, well, that's poetry, or that's not like music, which is, couldn't be more incorrect. And so I wonder, when you're thinking about Are there rules that you feel like you have to follow as a composer, especially working in music theater? Or are you just like, to hell with whatever that is? Being like, bringing the music in at its core is what's important, and the story will fall around that. Like, I guess what I'm asking is, how does your musicality and your musicianship show up through all areas of the performance?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, and a lot of it, I think, it has been years of like feeling the imposter syndrome of being like, oh, like I remember after I wrote my first solo show, Where Did We Sit on the Bus, my first play ever, right? People were like, cool, so what's next? And I was just like, what are you talking about? What's next? They're like, what play are you writing next? You're a playwright now. And I'm like, what? I'm like, no, I went to school with like Jen Silverman and Idris and all these people who are like playwrights, right? And I'm like, I'm not that. And then, transitioning into, and then people being like, cool, you want to compose this musical? And I'm like, oh no, I don't really do that. And they're like, we saw your play, we saw your show, you composed. And I'm like, I mean, I guess. And they're like, cool, so do it. So there's been like this imposter syndrome that I felt for a long time of how can I call myself a playwright or a composer if it's not my expertise? Right. And which I think is incredibly, a lot of people go through that, and it's very harmful to like the self, right? Meaning that like, my wealth of music is something, my wealth of knowledge of music, I guess, is something that I shouldn't try to undermine, I guess. And I know how I feel when a song plays. I know that. I remember in that class, man, Bob Baki is his name, the teacher, middle school teacher. I got to shout him out. And I remember us in class singing Cats in the Cradle. The Cats in the Cradle and the Silver Spoon, Harry Chapin. And dude, that song like hit me in my core. I think it's probably because I have daddy issues, but I'm like, I know how that song made me feel, right? Like I know how that song affected me, and not only in its amazing structure of verses and how the chorus shifts throughout. Like I know how it makes me feel, and that's not something that necessarily is taught, right? Like I mean, I guess you can teach it, but like it's an essence. It's like a feeling, and I think
there's like an authenticity in it.
Yeah, there's an authenticity of it, and I remember learning how to play guitar. I learned how to play guitar very late in life. I should say late in life, but like relative to my age now, I learned probably like 10 years ago, and like just learning how to play different chord structures and like songs that I love that I wanted to sing to. You're like, oh, that 4-chord structure makes you feel happy, or that chord structure makes you feel melancholy. There's this great artist that I love. His name is Jacob Collier, who plays. He'll do Instagram lives where he's just like, I'm going to whip up an emotion and I'm going to start playing chords that signify that emotion. And it's amazing. It's so awesome.
It's amazing.
And I'm kind of incredibly inspired by stuff like that, where I'm like, yes, music. There's a reason why music is like you can play, those trailers where they like play, like where, what's that movie with Jack Nicholson, where The Shining, right? Where they play like really happy music with The Shining, and you're just like, what a shift this does. Or Dumb and Dumber with horror music.
A different movie.
It's like that. Yeah, like music can affect how you feel. Like it can change your emotional kind of reception of whatever you're watching that accompanies it, right? And I think that's what's really powerful about it. And the thing that I kind of love playing with is how, different musical elements can shift the way that we hear a text. And so that's been a huge kind of, I've leaned into that a little more as I've started composing more of kind of looking at the intricacies of music and text together. And I think that's honestly, like you can take a bunch of different poetry and put it under different styles of music, and you've got, I mean, an endless, infinite amount of kind of outcomes, I think.
I mean, one of the great fun things to do. So for those of you watching, please do this afterwards. If you just like go to YouTube and search Brian Quijada, there's some great videos. One of which I actually think this was in ART's Insta story today. It's the mashup you did of Paul McCartney and Chance the Rapper.
Yes.
It's just so fun. It's just so, and I think it goes into what you're talking about, that like seeing these layers and seeing how these different like styles and things that you wouldn't even think to connect or to layer.
Yeah.
Once you do, it brings forth something entirely different.
I love that you brought up that video. So what's crazy about that video is, well, I shouldn't say what's crazy about the video. I mean, you should watch the video. It's just me interpreting both of those songs. But they have the same chord structure. And when you think about it, you're just like, oh, and it's not a 4-chord structure. It's like 6 or 7 chords. I can't remember exactly what it is. But regardless, what's amazing about it is that both of those songs are about like a mother figure. Like Paul McCartney's "Let It Be" is about his mom, Mary, and Chance the Rapper's "Sunday Candy" is about his grandmother. So it's like they're both trying to embody the same emotion of like nostalgia or like feeling like wanting to connect to like a passing relative, or it's interesting how actually similar they are. They're both kind of religion. Mother Mary and Sunday Candy is about going to church with his grandmother. It's like they were meant to be put together. Yeah,
someone just needed.
Somebody just needed together. Yeah, exactly. And so I think that's what's amazing is that chord structure is one that really kind of connects both of them.
Well, I want to get into some of the work specifically, although I feel like this is a path we could be traveling for a while.
It's true. It's true. We could talk about it for hours.
I'm trying to be better about my timekeeping, which I'm never great at. And I think it gives Sara acid reflux off screen. But I wanted to talk a little bit about your piece, Where Did We Sit on the Bus? So I'm wondering if you could just sort of kick us off with the genesis story. And then I have a couple of pieces of media I want to share. One is a trailer from when you performed the show at Victory Gardens in Chicago. But then also the show is currently running in a Zoom adaptation via Actors Theatre of Louisville. And I want to show folks that trailer as well, just so they can sort of see the difference in the COVID adaptation. But
yes,
why don't you tell us a little bit about it to start?
Yeah. So I mean, the genesis of it is that I just recently moved. How we got on was like a play that like took me on a high. It made me move to New York. It got me an agent. It was a huge hit in Louisville, and then I moved out here, and a couple of years passed, and I'm just like, cool. What am I doing with my life? Waiting on the phone to ring or the email to come in, and then I just decided, it was just like I sat down and I was just like, I think I need to. Nobody's going to write the perfect piece, right? Like nobody's going to write me the piece where I can beatbox and like rap and sing and talk about my family and talk about being, Central American. Coming from a Central American immigrant family. And so I just started writing it, and I had a lot of pieces that I'd compiled over the years. I call it like a theatrical mixtape of my life, right?
Yeah.
I wrote some of it as early on as like 16 years old. But it's basically a coming of age story of me trying to find my identity, not only in my family, but in my culture and my race, and like in my country, right? Feeling what my place was in a black and white world. So Where Did We Sit on the Bus stems from this poem I wrote about asking my third grade teacher where Latinos sat during the civil rights, on the civil rights buses. And then the after I've been doing it for a long time, five or 6 years. And I think I felt the need to, I performed it. It premiered it in an Obama administration, all throughout a Trump administration. And then I felt like, I think I need to be done doing it for a little bit and focus on some other things. And that's when Actors Theatre of Louisville was just like, well, would you be down with somebody else doing it? And I'm like, hell yeah, let's do that. I don't know if it'll work, but I think I'm excited about it. And they eventually did it. And I think it turned out to be an incredible success. I really, really loved what they did with it. It's kind of the new version of it first off is performed by my good friend Sachi Chavez, who is a looper, multi-instrumentalist, amazing artist. And she did it in her house with every single one of her instruments. And it's like this in between of theater and film. I can't really describe it, but it's like there's like an animation part in it. It's really exciting. And totally different than what I did on stage. So it's really cool.
Yeah, let's check out I'm going to start with the trailer of your performance at Victory Gardens.
Awesome,
I want to talk just a little bit about what it is like to perform your own work, and then we'll watch the trailer of Sati doing the show.
Sounds good.
So yeah, let's start here. Oh, wrong one. Here we go. Okay.
She said she laid under a board with flowers on top in the back of a pickup truck to get through immigration. Why isn't there an Oregon Trail game that tells that story? I really like my theater class. I get to perform and dance. I love dancing, my father says, and playing my guitar. But will you see me getting paid for it? A singer, a dancer. I want to be an artist. Do you know how much hard work it took to get you here? I won't give you my blessing, and I never will. Let's get ready for the madness. Brian, we are going to kneel and pray. Eduardo, go get my Bible. Come on. Michael Jackson didn't study, and he was singing and dancing when he was my age. Shamona. MJ is my new god. Is it wrong to have an obsession with wanting a happier life and having happier dreams? Isn't it a bit extreme to deem a mass population of people rapists, murderers, and drug dealers based on the actions of a few? I'm tired of the news they're selling, saying anything they can to make it so compelling. It makes me feel like yelling, but instead I'll start spelling HOPE. When I was a kid, my dad would put me on his knee, and he'd ask me what it was I dreamed to be.
Amazing.
All day.
That is such a good trailer, A.
Oh, they did a great job.
It's so good. I'm struck by so many things watching that, but I think I want you to talk a little bit about what it is to sort of write and perform your own work. But also, I feel like watching that trailer highlights this idea that so much magic can be captured in the theater with so few things.
Totally.
Right. And like, we get arrested by the big productions and the technology, and that's also incredibly exciting. But you just watch, like, having not even been able to experience that show live in Chicago, watching the sort of like energy and magic you packed into the square is like thrilling. Yeah.
I thanks, man. Yeah, in terms of like, I think everybody should write a solo show and do it. Like, just, I think it's been like, it's saved me like a lot of, I think, money in therapy, although I still think I need more therapy, but like, it's like, I talk about a lot of, personal things. And I think it allowed me to, travel the country, having people come up to me and say, hey, I related to this story because of my love for Michael Jackson and like my complicated feelings with that, and how like I say in the show that I felt like a brown boy wanting to be a brown boy wanted to be a black boy wanting to be a white boy. And and people talking about like being like, yeah, it was super weird to experience that, or people being like, listen, I don't speak a lick of Spanish, but like my parents are Polish and your parents are my parents. And I think that it was an incredibly kind of healing thing to talk about wanting to find in a show that talks about wanting to find your place, having people come up to me afterwards and being like, I went through the exact same things and we couldn't be farther. We couldn't be more dissimilar. And I think that's amazing and magical and right. And I think to the next thing of being like, being like how much magic can be done on a square. I think that I packed the show with all the things that I loved, right? Like all the things that I had put. I wouldn't say as far as like, you know, how many hours is the Beatles thing, that concept? Like what is it? 100,000 hours or whatever. It's not 100,000. What is it? I don't know how many hours it is. I don't think I've packed it that much to each one of those things, but like beatboxing, I can't imagine I've done it for that long, but I have packed in I packed in all the things that I love doing, like the things that I loved about performing music and performing theater and comedy into that one show. And I think that's comes from like a philosophy, like an old school philosophy of that I think that I heard from Idris Goodwin, who's like it seems like a big brother to me. He's just like, at first you got to start off writing shows that you can do out of a garage. Like just do it for people to pass by. Like let theater be about the community and let it be like, do something that you could pack in a backpack. And that's why like the show was switched from like a guitar to like a ukulele. Cause I'm like, I could pack a ukulele in my bag, you know? I think it's born out of like, let's be as scrappy as possible. Cause, I didn't know that anybody was going to, want to watch this show. You know, I just kind of did it because I felt I needed to. And I think that's the magic of it. I'm really happy that now it's born like it's got new legs in a way that I never imagined it would.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I want to watch the next clip, but I also want to just like pull this through what you're talking about in terms of solo performance, because I think it also informs our conversation about Dragon's Cycle.
Oh yeah.
In a big way, because there's so much between what you and Sara done individually as artists, right?
Yes.
Before we go there, I want to show this other clip as well. Mm-hmm. This is always the fun part where everyone gets to like wrestle with my abilities as my own text.
No.
Which is never a blast, but no, totally get to it. Okay, one more time. Here we go. Okay. All right, here we go. Same show, everyone. Different performer on Zoom this time. All right, here we go.
White bread, they think I'm white bread, just like Wonder Bread, like I wasn't bread, right? White bread, they think I'm white bread, just like Wonder Bread, like I wasn't bread, right? White bread, they think I'm white bread, just like Wonder Bread, like I wasn't bread, right? White bread, they think I'm white bread, just like Wonder Bread, like I wasn't bread, right? People said I'm white bread, just like Wonder Bread, like all I got is white kids, a widespread race of Caucasian. Must be a white town that she was raised in, or any other variation of that phrasing. But on every occasion, I'm of the brown persuasion, a product of U.S. bound migration, a combination of Latin roots and the inclination passion for dreamy American pursuits. Holla, that's the bread that they ate next to the town I was raised. While we praise Jesus, my friends play dreidel, dreidel. In the winter, we lit the tree lights. They lit menorahs every year for 8 nights. White bread, like I wasn't bread, right? White bread, they think I'm white bread. It's like Wonder Bread, like I wasn't bread, right?
Oh, Lord.
Oh, Jesus.
She's amazing. Oh my God. It's amazing. It's crazy. It's crazy. I watched that and I'm like, oh, who did that? Like, I'm like, oh, like, first off, like, it's what's awesome is that like music that I wrote is like reinterpreted in a way, like the fact that she's singing it. She's more of a singer than she is a rapper, and I'm more of a rapper than I'm a singer, right? But like, she's taken some of these, she takes the songs and she like elevates them in ways that I could have never done. It's amazing, and it's so cool to watch it. I remember watching it the first time and being like, I'm a wreck because like I'm just like, why did her dad treat her like that? You know what I mean? I'm like, I'm experiencing the story through like in a completely different way, in a completely different lens. It's mind-boggling. It's crazy.
It's why, you know, it's also like, again, just like the potency of performances like that we were talking before we went live, right? That there's so much exhaustion with the digital work. And you know, we're trying to find new ways into it and make it exciting for folks. But then you see something like that and you're like, it can work, right? Like we're learning, but like you get a performer that's so dynamic like that with such an interesting piece. Like there really can be this magic.
It's true. It's true.
I wonder a little bit if you can just talk about like the personal experience of like, you talk about how the show like saved you time in therapy, right? That it was like, it was like such an event for you. So what was it like to step back from it and watch someone else tell this story that is, you know, in ways universal and in ways sort of uniquely yours?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's the big change that, the big change that it was between mine and her interpretation is, obviously the fact that like COVID forced it into a film, right? Like it made it into like a movie theater like aspect, but like in terms of content, it's, I remember her calling me and she's just like, I've worked with her before and she's a queer artist and I had told her to read it and I'm like, do you think that this role kind of speaks to you? And she called me and she's just like, that moment when you were on the dance floor, very nervous and not confident in your dance moves, trying to ask girls to dance with you. She's like, that was me too. And I'm like melting. I'm like, oh my God, I'm like, this is amazing. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't even have to change that much because we both like girls. And she's just like, yes. But I think because it's like her and because like we kind of modified it to her family was very accepting of the fact when she came out. And so I'm just like, great. Like this seems really a perfect kind of way to reinterpret the story. Is that watching it, I think with somebody she never saw me do it, which is great.
That's great. Yeah.
Because she wasn't trying to replicate my performance or anything. She just did her own thing. She interpreted it in the ways that, with all the things that she loves doing, adding instruments that I don't know how to play. She added her stuff, like the things that she loves doing. And it was incredibly nice to know that like a show that gave me so much and kind of was the beginning of a huge chapter in the shift in my life, that she was able to kind of take it on. And it's beautiful. She her and the director Matt Dixon did a remarkable job of trying to make it, like more of a concept album type of visual concept album is what they're called, right? Where it's like you get different flavors of how you can use these tracks in different ways via film. It's so cool and refreshing. And yeah, I hadn't seen that trailer in kind of a little bit because it premiered maybe like 3 months ago now. So I hadn't seen that trailer, and it gives me goosebumps.
Yeah. It's incredible, and it's running till May. There's a question in the chat actually about wanting to know where to find the trailer that it showed and to find the performance. So Sara, I'm just going to ask you if you can to grab Sara's question there in the Q&A, and I'm sending Sara on a little bit of a wild goose chase because I didn't prep her for this, but if we can drop the link to the Actors Theatre of Louisville website where you can sort of rent the production for film, I'd highly recommend. So we'll get that out to you all soon. So I want to talk about Dragon Baby.
Let's.
And there's a question in the chat too about the Dragon Cycle. And so for folks who don't know, an artist that we've been working with for a few years named Sara Porkalob has written a sort of cycle of plays about her family. The first two, the first being Dragon Lady, which we had it over on 2 years in a row. And then the second piece is called Dragon Mama, which we also had it over on nearly 2 years ago now, which is hard to believe. Both were solo shows. The first is, Sara with a band, and she's telling a story of her grandmother's immigration from the Philippines. Lots of music. And then the second is the story of her mother. And it's mostly a play with definitely heavy music influence throughout. And so the third is Dragon Baby, which is Sara's story. And it will be sort of a multi-performer character piece. Brian is writing the score, and our friend Andrew Russell is directing, and he's directed the other pieces for Sara as well. So coming soon, we'll tell you post-pandemic what that actually looks like. But hopefully coming very soon. So I wonder, Brian, one of the things that struck me is when we first presented Dragon Lady, when we were just getting to know Sara and started to develop this relationship with her, as we were talking about Dragon Baby, she kept saying I think I want to make sure, she said, my voice, I sing in so many different styles and there's so many different genres. And so I want to make sure we're able to bring a lot of different sort of musical perspectives into the score. So she said, I think we're going to have to hire multiple composers, right? We're going to have to ask people to write 2 and 3 songs a piece. Mm-hmm. And so we were on this sort of thought exercise, what would that look like? Certainly other musicals have done it. How do we structure that? And then she was like, no, I met the guy. It's Brian Quijada. He can do it all. He is the person who can bring that sensibility into this.
So he's the guy that loves Biggie, but also loves cabaret.
That's such a great description. I feel like if you ever need to be on online dating profiles again, that's your line. You don't need to write anything else in your bio. Just that you love Biggie and cabaret.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Well, I wonder if you can talk about what was that spark with you and Sara, that artistic spark? Where did you meet? Where did you sort of find the energy?
Totally. So I have a play with a good friend and collaborator. Her name is Hansel Chung. We wrote a play called Undesirables, commissioned by Seattle Repertory Theatre, which is where Sara is based out of. And the first workshop that we were going to go do at Seattle Rep, we were going to use all Seattle artists, and I had heard through the solo performance, grapevine or whatever, that there was this I'd heard about her already, this super dope solo performer named Sara Porkalob, and I was just great, we got to have her be in this play, and she wasn't available, when we came back 2 years later, I think. She was available, and immediately I could see this crazy talent, this amazing voice, and it's charisma. She's just she's incredible. She's such a big personality and so charming that I instantly was just oh yeah, she's amazing. I kick it with her, and at the end of the week, she was just hey, so what are you doing? And I can't remember what, at the beginning, March or something. I think it was March, right? Beginning of pandemic. She's what are you doing in March? And I'm just I don't know what's up. And she's just like, I'm going to reach out to you about something. And I'm like, okay. And then she did. And there was like no question. I was incredibly drawn to her as a person and as a performer. And then as soon as I saw then her solo performances, which are amazing, it's like the respect of the mutual solo performer was there of it's not easy. Like solo performance is not an easy thing. It's like having to captivate an audience for an hour and as such, you know. And her solo shows are like an hour and a half, or like I'm like an hour 15. She goes for like an hour 45 or something, and I'm just like, it's a feat. It is so hard, and so the respect there is definitely, I think, mutual. And so that's kind of how it started. And then she sent me a playlist. She's just like, I think the music of this new show, which we still haven't even decided. I know that it's the show that she worked on that I wrote, called Undesirables, is multi-instrumentalist, live looped, like my solo show is. Live looping, which for anybody who doesn't know is like layered music making. I can show you like a super quick demo of like, if this is a looping app, right? It's pretty standard looping app, but it's like, let me pump up the volume. So this first line is just a simple beatbox, and you can add a melody, and then you can kind of isolate them or delete. And it's basically layered music making. And so we don't know if Dragon Baby is going to have some looping in it. We're kind of exploring at this point, like we're at the point of the process where like we're writing it all, but then how the story is told is up for, you know, I think exploration. And that's what's really, sorry?
I was just saying, doing it all over Zoom.
We have been doing it all over Zoom, and looping over Zoom is not the easiest thing. So at this point, we're just kind of like mapping out her story and with the context of her, you know, knowing that this comes as the third chapter in the cycle. There's something really exciting about the fact that this is not just her, that it's multiple people, or the fact that like, it could be told in a kind of new way, because even her first two solo shows aren't the same. You know, they're not in the same. They're two solo, but one's like a cabaret, the other is like a kind of a more straightforward solo show with music in it. But they're different. They're totally different. And so I think that's what's cool, is that each one has their own voice. But yeah, so we've been working on it only in quarantine. I have never met the director, though I love him, Andrew Russell. He's such a lovely human being and great collaborator and super smart. And it's wild. It's bananas that this time. But I kind of dig it, actually, the kind of separation of it all. I mean, I want to be, of course, I'm a social butterfly, but being able to like escape into my own world and not feel bad about like, you know, about that escapism of like going into my corner and being like, I got to just pump some stuff out. I don't feel as bad over Zoom.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, certainly you and Sara have a shared virtuosity that I think definitely comes through and it's going to feed the work.
I mean, I was going to say that she sent me a playlist early on. She's just like, I think this is I didn't say this, but she's like, this is the music I think that should inspire this show. And all of it was like my favorite music.
Your bops.
Yeah, my bops. And I was just like, yo, we have the same, we were also born in the same year. It's like, it's we grew up on the same stuff. It's really exciting. Just that collaboration.
We're approaching time, but there's one more question from the audience that I want to make sure we get to.
Let's go.
Dr. Lloyd Johnson. Dr. Johnson is asking, how has your work been received by African American and Afro Latinx communities?
That's really great. It's a great question. It's I think the landscape of how we take in Latinx art has changed a lot. Like, and I think I'm coming to learn a bunch, right? Like I can tell you my tribute, like my rocky experiences with racism, knowing that like I've never been pulled over by the police, right? Like it's something that's kind of new. And I think what has happened in the past year of the Black Lives Matter movement and kind of just like the shit show that this past year has been, has enlightened me. And I'm like, oh, there's a part in Where Did We Sit on the Bus where I say, cause I'm lighter skinned than some of the Mexican busboys working in her favorite restaurants. And Satya, when we were working on rewriting it, was just like, I don't feel like that. I'm darker than you are. And I'm like, oh snap. Yeah. And like, I think there is something like the idea of the spectrum of colorism is so super real. And I think, you know, I'm not, there's never anything where I'm like, oh, you know, like I think I acknowledge it, knowing that it is real and understanding that even as a Latinx person who has experienced my fair share of marginalization, I still have experienced privilege. And I think that's as a man, as a cis man, as a like light-skinned Latinx man, it's something that I understand. Whether like reception was the question, and nobody's come up to me and been like, "You need to talk about this." But I, as an artist, have been moved by the transgressions of last year and kind of the conversation, the ongoing conversation of color and race. And so, yeah, I mean, I cater. I mean, I don't say I cater my shows to a Latinx community, but I do write about my upbringing a lot. I write about immigration and I write about the border a bunch, and so it's not like I'm not trying to be inclusive, right? It's like I just write about my personal experiences. So. I think it's been well received. I can't really speak to, and I've never had anybody come up to me and been like, your play doesn't acknowledge us or something.
Right.
But I'm still learning. I think everybody's on that train, right? Of still continuing to learn about what's going on in our experiment of a country.
Well, I think that's like the function that arts can play right now, right? Like I think that's why it's so hard for us, because we would pour into the work right now as a way to offer catharsis or a way to open up conversation where people might not feel like they know where to start.
Yeah.
And so it's a challenge to be a part and think about how to share that.
Oh yeah. But I think it's good, right? Like I think these conversations that are happening are like making for more, thought out, right? Like more, let's just not say something because it feels, or like because it's easier, right? Like put thought into it because it requires more to be more, to have more empathy, right? Like it requires more thought, and attention to be better people, you know? And so I think that's what's really great about these conversations and the art that's kind of being made. Yeah. I feel very lucky to be making in this time, because there's so much going on that needs to be put out on paper.
Yeah, agreed. I went over time again, which
well, then you're staying on brand.
right. I'm nothing if not consistent. That's what we know. Brian, I can't thank you enough for being here today. It's so great to have this time to talk to you, and I'm really glad that like our audiences are going to have this time to like really get to know you, because I feel the more that people are brought into the process and get to understand how the work is made, the more excited they get about it. So as we embark on this journey with Dragon Baby and what I'm sure are going to be many other collaborations, I'm so glad you took this time and people got to know you and your work today.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been a delight, and I can't wait to meet in person and to even to say thank you to the people who are watching, and hopefully meet y'all as well.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thank you everyone for watching today. Sorry we went a little over, but thanks for hanging on with us. And we will see you next week with Lisa Yancey and Anna Fitzloff. Thanks all. Take care.